All right. Good morning, everybody. This is Coach Isaac Avon. I want to talk about acceleration and max velocity development today. This was a presentation I gave to an intern class at a facility I work at not too long ago. And I thought I would take from some of the guys I've learned from and some of the concepts that I think are super important and share it with everybody today. So it's going to be heavily influenced by guys like Joel Smith, Cal Dietz, Adarian Barr, um, guys like that in terms of the content that you're seeing. So as much as I would like to think that I'm original with this, not as much. Okay, some of the stuff we're going to talk about: why we sprint, what acceleration looks like, what max velocity looks like, acceleration, max velocity guidelines, developing, progressing, excel, max velocity, weight room exercises, drills, and people to learn from. Why we sprint? I think it's a pretty obvious answer. The biggest spectacle of sport in general. It's a World Cup right now. You're looking at TV. You're seeing that guy that's getting that through ball. That's just way faster than everybody else. And getting to that, and there's nothing you could do. You could be as technically execute as fast as possible, but in a situation like that, if you don't have that physical quality to express that, then you're not going to be as good as your opponent. So it's super important. Why are guys like Tyreek Hill so good? Because they are so good technically, tactically, but they're also extremely fast. So it's something super important. Speed is king, right? Spreading highly reduces likelihood of injury. We know that from some of the studies about hamstring injuries, specifically Achilles injuries. Exposes the central nervous system to highest levels of intensity, develops our type 2X fibers under high velocity and stress, which is super important, stiffens tendons and joints, and develops an explosive and elastic nervous system, but also increases the speed reserve. I think the speed reserve is something that is not really talked about as much in terms of everything else that is discussed here. If we're accelerating for longer and we don't hit that our max velocity as quick as our opponent, but we are at that same speed, then therefore we are not peaking as early. We aren't hitting that roof, that ceiling as fast as the guy or gal next to us. So we're able to outlast them a bit and able to touch a higher quality than them. If that's their 100%, that's our 80%. Then obviously our 100% is going to be something that they can't even touch. So sprinting and increasing that ceiling and touching our genetic threshold is going to be extremely important. The only way you can do that is by developing acceleration, developing max velocity. That's just super important to expose the central nervous system to that high velocity movements. One of the craziest things is our central nervous system can output the fastest thing that our brain can fire to our muscles to be able to move our skeleton just as fast as that, right? So if we are continually doing things like stick drills, like jump and stick, things like that, but not exposing our body to sprinting, things at high velocity, giving our brain that crazy dose of potency, then we're not going to have a nervous system that's explosive and elastic here. It's important that we touch sprints, we test sprints, develop sprinting form, and touch max velocity often. Put in residual there, Vladimir Shurin. I'm sure we've all seen it with our residual list there. At the very bottom is just alactic speed is like plus or minus 2 to 5 days. So you got to continue to touch it. Those high intensity days are super important, and what you do in between that is super important. But being able to actually hit it often and stay within that residual is super important, especially in season, off season, all those things. You got to make sure we're sprinting often. Something I kind of preach to a lot of people is, if nothing else, for team sport athletes, get out of the weight room and sprint. Like, move your body rather than moving your body under load. Like, if we can move our body sprinting and develop that, then that's going to take care of a lot of things. You hear stories about weightlifters or certain people that have been squatting for a while, go out, take time away from the barbell and just learn to sprint and do stuff like that. And because their nervous system is able to put out high outputs like that, they come back and they're able to hit PRs. Sprinting is really that magical dose. All athletes should sprint. Sprinting produces robust, explosive athletes who are more resistant to injury and more reactive in terms of central nervous system output. In fact, 6 to 10 weekly max velocity sprint bouts per week concluded significant less injuries among Gaelic football players. Study by Malone Sprinting allows the body to produce and absorb forces up to 5 to 7 times body weight, both eccentrically and concentrically there, and all done at high velocity. Sprinting develops explosive musculoskeletal structures up and down the anterior and posterior chain from the tendons to the hamstrings. In general, sprint ability has a typical residual of 4 to 6 days. So if nothing's going to sell you there, this is why we sprint. This is why it's super important. Be super quick at everything you do. Expose your body to forces that you'll never see in a weight room, and make yourself resilient to all injuries, basically. Not all, but a lot of them, right? The more we sprint, the more robust we are, the better we are going to be on the field, right? What does acceleration look like? This figure on the right is from Joel Smith's Speed Strength. And here's some of the important things on the side. Body position and flexion to overcome inertia by producing horizontal force. We're seeing our body push our body forward by pushing the earth back, by creating a lot of horizontal force by the front two parts of our tripod there and our foot. If you could see here how the torso is leaned over at the same angle that our shin angle is there with our foot. The foot is striking directly under our hip. You can see by this line, massive shin angle change, a rolling action. You can see this roll here. It will strike down into the foot and you'll roll off into late stance and then early swing here. Pronation, supination. We'll see a little video here coming up, but our foot's going to land in a super pronated position as it lands there with aggressive casting out of the ankle there. Incomplete triple extension through the first couple steps. A massive inconception there, massive myth or misconception there of acceleration, right? We are not necessarily going to full triple extension. It's a delayed knee extension there that looks like a full triple extension, but our hip is not actually going all the way through, and we're not going into complete plantar flexion. So a little bit different there than what you would think. Massive arm swing. That arm is thrown back as the leg is getting higher contact times to match that contact time. So arm will fly back. Sometimes it'll straighten out all the way like this as that leg is almost straightened out, just like that. And aggressive casting into the ground. So does this look like team sport acceleration? Kinda. You know, it might not, because we have different things. It's not always going to look like a track and field sprinter, but this is pretty damn close to what it is going to look like. This is a figure from Derek Hansen. Just want to look at, like, you can see exactly how the lean of the trunk here and the touchdown of that mid-stance foot is in line with that arm. And then we see the torso at the same angle as that shin with that foot. So it all kind of is relatively the same, right? That foot comes up high and the foot is striking directly under that hip for a longer contact time there. Max velocity, what's that looking like? Another figure from Joel Smith's Speed Strength, slightly squatted. Right here you can see mostly upright. That xiphoid process is projected out with that big chest. Foot strike is slightly in front of the hip. So right about here is where it's striking down. It's going to strike down in more of a supinated position on that fourth and fifth metatarsal, on that lateral tripod head of the foot. Balance between front side and back side mechanics. So we don't want that foot pushing all the way back, because that's going to make that hamstring under a lot of load as we quickly recoil it forwards. But we also don't want our knee to come super up high and then come out straight like a B skip and then come down, because that's way too aggressive on the front side. It's going to throw off that timing. So it's a good balance between front side and back side there. A stiff Achilles tendon to make sure that all those forces that we're producing are actually being put into the ground. Our Achilles tendon is holding that as we go from early stance to late stance to toe off. Aggressive arm action to complement the cycling, right? Arm is not going to be as far back here now. It's probably going to be a little bit more bent with that elbow pressing up and out. Relative big amounts of rotation, right? So I'm not rotating probably as much as I am when I'm doing acceleration, but I'm still rotating a lot, right? The spine and the rib cage need to be free up to let yourself rotate as you sprint. No crashing or bouncing, loss of energy through the kinetic chain. Everything is staying pretty stiff. If you watch a a video of a sprinter, elite sprinter at max velocity. It almost looks like they're just floating through air as all that force is being produced as they move, right? They're rotating, but they're not all over the place. They're not bouncing up and down because their foot and their Achilles tendon can't handle that amount of force they're producing. They're staying relatively still in the air as their lower body moves a lot throughout the ground. So this loss of energy throughout the kinetic chain starts from the ground up, right? If your foot can't absorb that force, then your Achilles tendon can't, then your knee can't, then your hip can't, then your shoulders can't, then your head can't, and you just look like a terrible sprinter. Right, we're supinating to pronating. So landing here on that fourth metatarsal, then coming toe off, horizontal and vertical impulse here. So we're still having a little bit of a mix, which is something Joel talked about in his book, which is you're not getting rid of all horizontal and impulse, but you're adding a lot more vertical impulse than you would have as compared to acceleration. And here's another, because they have to react to oncoming defender, stuff like that, always having to make decisions. So you're never going to be really able to open up like a track athlete. But these are some of the things that I think are super important to try and develop into your athletes. And then a question always ask yourself, why do we do wall drills, ace skips, pogo hops, butt kickers, and arm action drills? Do they actually do anything? Do they make us better sprint form? Why? There's so many damn sprint drills that you'll see across the internet that you grew up probably doing, butt kickers, ace skips, things like that. And you could even just watch yourself, watch your athletes, watch your kids do it, watch them warm up with that, and then watch them actually sprint. Looks nothing like it, right? So why are we actually doing those things? You could make the argument that it's reactive contracting of your psoas, your hip flexors, prepare yourself for that fast knee drive, right? There's a time and place for everything, but are we actually getting better at acceleration with wall drills when our foot is landing way behind our hip there? Are we actually teaching position there? I say no, but there's a time and a place for everything. It's just you have to ask why we're actually doing these drills. Acceleration max velocity training guidelines. Acceleration usually goes out for a team sport athlete like 20-25 yards, 10 to 25 yards, 30 seconds for more of a 10-yard sprint, 2 minutes more for a 25-yard sprint, minutes of rest, 48 reps per set. You can do multiple sets. It's just really depending on the rest and what point you are in your progressions. Max velocity is out to 25 to 50 yards. 50 yards kind of being more that cap. For as high as you really want to go with those team sport athletes. 1 minute of rest per 10 yards of run, 3 to 5 reps per set. Rest more to become purely lactic. This is not conditioning. This is making us actually faster. So to be actually faster, we actually need to give our nervous system and our body time to rest. After a crazy set like that, you might need 48 hours to actually fully recover before you can, start to get faster again. Here's just kind of like an example of acceleration development, like per week, maybe like 2 sessions per week, 4 by 10 yard, 5 by 10 yard, 6 by 10 yard, 5 by 15, 7 by 15, 6 by 20. It's a slow burn. You don't want to go, 2 weeks straight to 20 yards. You want to kind of keep it. If you're actually trying to work on form and trying to get them faster, you need to make sure you have that slow progression, slow burn. How hills, sleds, bands, different start positions, which I think is super important, starting in push-up position, half kneeling, stuff like that, working on any projection. That's what we're really working on here, is if you can give a constraint for how they start and force them into project differently into the ground, there is a lot better, different lead-ins. Athletes should be put in positions to self-regulate acceleration development rather than coached robotically learning environment. I think that if we put them in certain drills and give them certain things like a sled to work on that delayed hip and knee extension, or a hill to work on what that torso and chin angle looks like, or the different starting positions to work on projection, rather than us sitting there and talking them through drills like that is going to be way better. Developing progressing max velocity, kind of a similar progression here. Slow burn, especially with this, because this is super hard on the body. Doing this a lot more here. Actually sprinting is good here. Fly 10s, downhill sprinting, wickets, or just sprinting. Proper progression definitely pays off in the long run. It's going to take some time to develop to get really, really quick. Just the more and more you're exposed to it, the better you are. So similar to just getting in the gym, right? Being consistent, having a slow, thought out, methodical progression, not too many drills, just different constraints, right? Holding a med ball punches. There's a lot of good guys I'll talk about at the end that have a lot of good examples of what to actually do to put some drills in here to actually work on getting faster. Here's a crappy slide, but a post that I had earlier on my page of just what we can do in the weight room and what we're really doing on the weight room to aid. Notice how I said aid. It's not like we're like developing this in the weight room because it's impossible to develop this in the weight room. We're working on trying to target certain muscle groups, certain types of co-contractions, certain rates of muscle contraction, and trying to teach ourselves positions, and all those things will aid as we add them together with sprint training to help us look a little bit better. So with acceleration, obviously rate of force development is super important. So single leg strength and unilateral strength, our rear foot elevated split squats, skater squats, stuff like that, super important. Concentric force and power production, trap bar deadlift, box squats, squat jumps, medicine ball drills, spare squat throws, broad jump throws, and then the posterior chain, obviously, to manage all that rotation that you're getting through your rib cage and your spine. So barbell hip extensions, RDLs in general are going to be super important. Aiding top end in the weight room, some oscillatory, antagonist, facilitated specialized method lifts from Cal Dietz, some band assisted body weight, barbell, working on contraction and relaxation of certain big muscular groups there, like your quad, like your hamstring, your soleus, your gastrocs, and your glutes is going to be super important stuff that we can do in the weight room. Overcoming isometrics to work on just peak force development in certain positions, like Alex and Tara's running specific isometrics. So pin pulls, split squat, pushes, calf raise, pushes, stuff like that's going to be super important to put certain musculature in the positions to develop a lot of force. And then intensive plyometrics, step drops, step jumps, multiple hurdle hops, working on eccentric rate of force development, working on reactivity with the ground, tendon stiffness work. And then potentiation clusters, stuff to just develop the nervous system, right? Lift something heavy, sprint, lift something heavy, jump, then sprint, stuff like that. You know, give our nervous system a super potent stimulus in hopes of developing. Some drills. Joel Smith has a bunch of really good drill videos on his page. So for acceleration, different starts, bands around your hips, sleds, squatty runs, jumps, bilateral, unilateral, broad jumps, med ball stuff, max velocity, anything horizontally oriented for med balls, max velocity, intensive pogos, different pogo jumps, boom booms, bounds, skips, dribbles, things like that are going to be super important to put the pieces together to look better as you sprint fast. And that's really all I had for that. Some super important people that I learned from in terms of just reading their books or following them on Instagram, on YouTube. Joel Smith at Just Fly Sports, obviously. Tony Holler with Feed the Cats. Les Spellman, Darian Barr, Cal Dietz, Adam Metter, Brendan Thompson, Derek Hansen, Charlie Francis, obviously a GOAT there. Mike Young, Gray Morris, Nathan Keeley, Kyle Davey, YouTube, obviously, for just a bunch of examples of these speed drills. And Simply Faster is a great blog there for stuff. Simply Faster, you can also just get some of those timing gates, some things that are super important to developing speed. So thank you for tuning in and listening. Hope you got something out of this. If you have any questions, hit me up on my Instagram, Avon Performance, and we could talk about some of the stuff. But obviously, go to these guys first before you ask me a question on speed or anything like that. These guys are definitely the Mount Rushmore of speed guys. So thank you, and appreciate everybody for listening.